Welcome to this low carbon Chamber Low Carbon Live Lunch and Learn. I'm Stephen Sykes, and I manage the Chamber Low Carbon program, and I'm your host for today's session. Just a few housekeeping items before we start. All participants are on mute, so if you've got any questions, please use the Q&A facility at the bottom of your screen, and my colleague Darren Thomas and myself will be monitoring to capture your questions. There is also a chat function to say hello to the room and where you're from, if you so wish. Today's session is being recorded and will be available to watch again on the Chamber Low Carbon YouTube channel. For those unfamiliar with the programme, Chamber Low Carbon is brought to you by East Lancashire Chamber of Commerce in partnership with North and Western Lancashire Chamber of Commerce, Business-Wise Solutions and Boost, supporting businesses across Lancashire to go green, save money and reduce their carbon footprint. Part funded by the European Union, European Regional Development Fund, this £6 million programme provides a suite of free services to help businesses to improve their energy and environmental efficiencies, introduce on-site renewable energy generation, and by doing so, save money. The programme also helps Lancashire businesses that are developing new low-carbon technologies to bring their products to market, facilitate them being manufactured in Lancashire, and to help them find demonstrator sites within Lancashire. Today's live Lunch and Learn is brought to you by Marc McLoughlin. Marc is the Managing Director of KeyFleet. KeyFleet arrange vehicle and business funding for individuals and businesses, as well as advice on vehicle selection, fleet electrification, and offers businesses a range of fleet and risk management services. Marc has 23 years experience in the automotive, finance and fleet management sector, having worked for such businesses as Haydock Finance, Lloyds Bank, MNH Platinum, Bowker Motor Group and Citibank before forming KeyFleet. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome Marc and invite him to take the screen.
Thank you, Stephen. And thank you for the kind introduction. Hello to everybody for coming along today. So we're going to talk about electric vehicles. Presumably you've all maybe thought about whether or not an electric vehicle could be right for you. If you run a business that has a number of vehicles, your drivers might be asking you about electric vehicles. And it is something that is coming. You're not actually going to be able to buy a diesel or petrol vehicle in around 15 years time, brand new. So it's something that hopefully all of us can embrace. I know there's probably some of you in the room today that are familiar with some of the carbon targets and things that the governments are doing. And, you know, hopefully I can align that a little bit with what's going on in the transport world. I had a hell of an introduction from Stephen, so I will skim over my kind of next section reasonably briefly. I'll not read all that out, but I've been doing what I do for some time now. And we help a lot of businesses and private individuals with all sorts of things to do with vehicles and funding. The business itself, we help clients source, finance and manage either private vehicles or more often it's business vehicles and small and medium-sized fleets. And those are our company values that we try and hold ourselves to account to all the time. These are the different types of markets we serve. These are the different types of finance agreements we offer. Here are some of the funders that we partner with. We don't actually lease or finance our own vehicles. We're an intermediary. And we do that across a number of different sectors, whether it's cars, vans, even trucks now. More recently, we've just launched a truck division. Often we supply the vehicle with the contract, but also as often we just provide the funding. And that is underpinned by our fully owned fleet management system that we offer to our clients. So enough about me and KeyFleet. Let's talk about electric vehicles. Is it time for you, for your business to make the move? Well, transport is a big part of an actual larger, a bigger picture, if you will, that the UK government has committed to an 80% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2050. And of course, there's a lot of greenhouse gases coming out the back of internal combustion engine vehicles. So of course, transport has a big part to play in that. Specifically relating to transport, you may have heard this term, the road to zero, and this is the the road towards transport and motoring, getting to a massive reduction in emissions by 2030 for both cars and vans. But specifically, I alluded to it earlier, there's a 2035 ban, which is only 15 years away, which may seem some time away, but if you think that the average life cycle of a vehicle might be 3 or 4 years, that's not too many changes before we'll all be stood in the showrooms looking at battery operated vehicles. It's not just fully electric vehicles, it's any vehicle that uses electricity to reduce its carbon footprint. They're often referred to as ULEVs, ultra low emission vehicles, and it's a vehicle that emits less than 50 grams per kilometre of CO2. So some hybrids which use both petrol or diesel and electricity are also counted as being more environmentally friendly and benefit from some of the tax breaks that are available to businesses and private individuals. Here's just a brief summary of the ways that electricity is deployed within different vehicles. You've got a traditional hybrid vehicle here on the left, which is where the electric motor and the gasoline engine are working in unison to provide power to the vehicle. You've got the plug-in hybrid where the two kind of run separately rather than in unison. I'm driving one of those at the moment. It's a BMW i3. I've not had need to make use of the gasoline engine, and it generally just runs on full electric. And then you've got fully electric vehicles, BEVs, battery electric vehicles, things like the Tesla, the Nissan Leaf, you'll probably be familiar with. There isn't quite as much choice on electric vehicles as there are for more traditional petrol and diesel vehicles, but that is changing. There's new vehicles coming out all the time. We're about to welcome the Volvo's entry into the electric vehicle scene with the Polestar. There's a Volkswagen ID.3 which replaced the Golf. So a lot of the major manufacturers now are going to challenge Tesla, who undoubtedly are the market leader for fully electric vehicles. You may recognize the Teslas there in the top left and top right hand corner, the BMW i3 there on the right, Mercedes in the middle with their recent entry, the EQ3, which hasn't been particularly well received, to be honest, but there is more and more choice coming out in the electric vehicle market, and more people are taking note. So that's cars. If we just switch to vans for a moment, I'll not go into vans in too much detail, other than to say they're a little bit behind in terms of suitability from the car market. A lot of these vehicles don't have a range of much more than 100 miles on a full charge, and the payload, the amount of goods and the weight that's being carried in the vehicle can affect that as well. So some of these vehicles are really suitable for people that aren't carrying much and that are doing short journeys within a small region, but obviously very exciting when the commercial vehicle suitability catches up. There's a lot of businesses are going to be able to benefit from much lower running costs when they actually deploy electric vans, and then ultimately trucks as well. You may have seen that Tesla are launching an HGV. Just to give you a bit of an idea of the market at the moment, here are some figures from the Society of Motor Manufacturers recently. I'm not going to go into every little bit of detail here. I just want to draw your attention to the bottom table and the percentage change from 2019 to 2020. If you look at the drop in diesel sales year to date in 2020, see diesel and petrol are suffering. Battery electric vehicles are up 131%, as are mild hybrid diesels, and petrols are up also. So this is coming. This change is happening for all of us. It's going to affect everybody. In May, which admittedly was a terrible month for the car industry, I think it was down some 80-odd%. Tesla was the best-selling vehicle in May, the Tesla 3. Looking at June, when the market's coming back somewhat, you see those kind of sales jumping up. Tesla's still in there at number 9. So some of these vehicles are becoming more and more mainstream, more and more accepted, more and more adopted. One of the big drivers for that is the company car tax regime, benefit in kind, which a lot of you might be familiar with. Some of you might not know that it was announced that the new benefit in kind scale for electric vehicles would attract a 0% rate for this financial year, and that only rises marginally by 1% and 2% in the years to follow. So this has meant that a lot of drivers are knocking on the director's door and asking for an electric vehicle, potentially could save themselves £100, £200, £300, £400 a month and more on benefit in kind each month. The reason for that is that the benefit in kind scale is based on two main factors. One is the value of the vehicle, one is the CO2 emissions. So when you've got zero CO2 on a fully electric vehicle, and hybrids are rewarded as well, but on a fully electric vehicle, it's particularly attractive, not only to the driver, but also the business, because the amount of national insurance that the business pays for providing that company vehicle is also linked to CO2. So you can see it's very attractive for businesses and for drivers alike. These are the actual new benefit in kind tax rates that were announced this April. You can see there at the top that a zero CO2 vehicle is rewarded with the lowest rate, and it's also linked now uniquely, and this is new, to the actual range of the vehicle, and this is to reward vehicles that are able to drive for further on a purely battery powered journey. So if you take, for example, the Tesla 3, that has a range in excess of 130, so that's why it attracts the 0% rate and rising to 1 and 2 in the next few years. So huge savings available for both the business and the driver. There is an argument to look at actually buying or financing these vehicles as opposed to simply leasing. The write-down allowance for actually owning this vehicle as an asset on your books is 100% in the first year. What that actually means is if you take a £50,000 fully electric vehicle, you can actually claim £50,000 off your taxable profits in year one, essentially saving you the corporation tax, which I think currently is 19%. You'd save 19% of £50,000 immediately in the first year. That's very attractive. However, you've also got similar benefits and allowances through leasing. Again, because it's 0% CO2, you can put the 100% of the rentals against your taxable profits over the period of your lease contract. To be frank, it's about the same, to be honest. Whether you buy it or you lease it, the taxation benefits are very similar, because ultimately, even though you can have all of that tax write-off in year one through buying, you then have to sell it at the end of year 3, which derives an income, which again by itself is taxable. So they tend to be about the same. It's just that leasing's maybe a little bit more accessible in terms of initial rental and VAT efficiency and things like that. I did actually do an example for a client recently, and I want to share that with you now. This is a typical kind of fleet vehicle, an Audi A4 S-Line automatic. It's a 3-year, 15,000-mile contract, and you can see there that the fully maintained rental is £451 a month. And if you factor in the fuel cost, the national insurance that the business has to pay, and then at the bottom, the benefit in kind that the driver would pay, depending on whether or not they're a 20 and a 40% taxpayer. Now, interestingly, when you compare that to a Tesla 3, other models and manufacturers are available, by the way. It's just an easy one to do an example for. You can see it's actually more expensive to lease that vehicle, and that's because it's a more expensive car. The cost of producing these vehicles isn't quite in line with the diesel and petrol at the moment. So at first glance, that would be dismissed as not an option for the business because it means spending more money on the lease contract. However, when you factor in the full running cost, the saving on national insurance, you can see that's much, much cheaper for the business than the diesel Audi. And as I mentioned earlier, zero tax for the driver at the moment as well. So huge benefits. If I just summarize that, for a 40% taxpayer, the driver would be saving the best part of £1,800, and the company's also making a saving of just over £1,600. So you imagine a company that has 20, 30, 50 of these types of vehicles, the savings could be absolutely huge. And arguably, the driver's very happy, not only because of the tax saving he or she is making, but they're in a very modern vehicle. Now, if any of you have been in any of these cars, they're really quite, attractive. One of the problems that's affecting take-up of electric vehicles, though, is something called range anxiety. Yes, it's got a name, which is what some of you might be thinking is, the last thing I want to be doing is waiting at a petrol station for 40 minutes whilst my car charges, or worse, I run out. The truth is, one of the main things that people don't consider is that the adoption of this technology and using an electric vehicle is actually going to change the way you charge and fuel your vehicle, essentially. I've been driving this BMW i3 for the past 3 weeks. I haven't been near a petrol station because I don't need to. I charge at home, I charge at work, and that is enough to suit my journeys. And that's the thing that people maybe need educating about, is that some of the charging is a lot quicker, and actually you won't need to go to petrol stations. My advice to a lot of my clients is, if you need to rely heavily on the public charging network at the moment, as much as it is expanding rapidly, it perhaps isn't quite the time for you to make that move into electric. The other thing that's combating the range anxiety is the fact that a lot of the new vehicles now, as you can see in the top right hand corner of that illustration there, are coming out with much higher battery ranges than they were doing even a year or two ago. I've seen in the news this week or last week that Tesla have just celebrated a 400-mile range on a battery that they're going to be putting into the Model 3, and that's, you know, lots of developments on that are happening very, very quickly. Charging itself, the Office for Low Emission Vehicles are offering at the moment, don't quote me, I think it's £350 or certainly up to that amount off the cost of purchasing a home charger. I also believe it's the same for businesses at the moment. I think businesses can access the same level of grant funding for charge points, but they can actually have that for a number of I think it's up to 40 charge points you can have at one business. Since I've been working with the guys at Chamber Low Carbon Initiative, I've also learned that, like a lot of other kind of CO2 reducing initiatives and equipment, charge points and similar equipment can potentially apply for further funding through that chamber money. So if that's something that you haven't looked at already, it definitely makes the whole kind of proposition more attractive. So if we're just going to summarize the kind of pros and cons for your business for looking at electric vehicles, it's better for the environment. It gives a much more modern company image. I think you're probably viewed as being very progressive and looking after your staff as well. Much lower fuel costs, lower maintenance costs. Interesting, that hasn't been reflected in lease costs just yet. So I think the leasing companies are still trying to work out how much these vehicles cost to maintain. But by nature of the fact that there's much less moving parts in the vehicle, inevitably that cost is going to be lower. There's a Class 1 NI savings. There's a low benefit in kind. There's the tax relief for funding. And another kind of added benefit that we like at KeyFleet, because we are essentially a fleet management business, it allows people to make a strong business case for bringing people back into a company car scheme, which inevitably makes things easier to manage. It means you can manage your risk as well. Because whether people are running their own vehicles or business vehicles, the company still has that obligation to make sure that those journeys are safe and legal for the driver. So that makes things a lot easier when you're running company cars rather than people opting out of company car schemes. Some of the cons, there is still you know, less vehicles to choose from. People still do have that range anxiety. Charging does take longer, but again, I'm hopeful just offset that with the fact that you're going to be charging these vehicles at home and at work. It does cost more to buy or lease or finance these vehicles at the moment, but again, that is changing. And when you are doing your sums, you need to factor in the cost of actually installing the charge points as well. I think, again, don't quote me, it's not my area, but I think you can get a charge point from home, for home for anything from maybe £500, £600, £700. And I think the commercial charge points are a little bit more expensive. So really, all the kind of message I'd like to leave with you is that this can be amazing for you, for your business. It can save you some money, get you in a nice, new, attractive vehicle. But there are some things you need to think about. How will you fund it? How will you charge it? And is the vehicle suitable for the types of journey you do? It's not just the amount of mileage you do, it's the type of journey and how often you do that. So I hope that's been of interest. I hope some of you have got something from that. But I'd be happy to answer any questions about electric vehicles or fleet management or funding or anything at all that you might have.
We have one question at the moment from Derek Allen, so I'll just switch Derek's microphone on and he'll be able to ask his question directly. Derek?
Hey, Derek.
Hello, how are you, Mark?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Excellent presentation. Thank you very much. I've got a security background and I was talking to Carlos. obviously there's still lots of concerns about security. How concerned are you about security as these new models come out and the hackers getting in and slowing us down?
I can't hear Derek very well. Can anybody repeat what Derek's just said then?
Yeah, Derek's asking about security. How worried are people about their vehicles being hacked?
It's a good question. It's not something I know an awful lot about, but I can tell you that we've supplied probably 40 or 50 fully electric vehicles in this year. Not heard of any instances, not had any conversations about any concerns. I think Derek's probably alluding to the fact that these vehicles, especially Tesla as well, I guess, are kind of operated from a CPU, a central computer, and by nature could be more susceptible to crime. But it's not something I know an awful lot about, and it's not something I've spoke to anybody about that they're concerned about too much either, Derek, to be honest. But I'd have to find out a bit more about that for you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's just an area. I think obviously as these new ones come in, there could be vulnerabilities. But like
it could be, couldn't there? I mean, the more connected vehicles get as well, that kind of presents an opportunity maybe for criminals. But yeah, nothing I've heard too much about, Derek, to be honest.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Do we have any other questions? I can't see any that have come through. Just a comment on the range anxiety. A colleague of mine from the Liverpool City region, Stuart McBain, he is an accountant by profession, but he's a great believer in electric vehicles and renewable energy. And he actually set up a side business called Charging Around Britain. And he became the first person to drive around the coast of Britain in an all-electric vehicle.
Right.
It took him 3 weeks, and he had to plan it and he avoided all the major motorway networks, and he visited various wind farms and things. He did it as a publicity media campaign, and basically he could get around the coast. And as he said to me once, he said. He asked me how many petrol stations were there in Liverpool, to which I couldn't answer, and he reeled off several hundred. He then said, and how many electric vehicle charging points? To which I started. I knew that Mersey Traveller put some in. I knew that, so I said about 20. He said, no, over 35,000. Any three pin plug will do it.
Of course, yeah. No,
Since
absolutely right. It's a bit of a myth, really, to be honest. And it's having driven an electric vehicle for a few weeks myself. It's been an absolute doddle. I've not even got the charge point fitted at home yet. I'm literally charging off the mains. I'm driving 10 miles to work, 10 miles back. It made me wonder why I've not done it sooner. And I know actually as well, if you don't mind, Steve, one of my associates, Scott's on the call.
I was just going to say, I'm just about to allow him to talk if he wants to ask his question.
Well, Scott's actually a Tesla driver, so maybe he can ask his question and share with us some of his experiences with his Tesla.
Well, hopefully he can now speak.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Scott. How you doing?
How's it? Yeah, very well, thank you. Yeah, very well. The charging infrastructures, they're a lot better now, aren't they, compared to what they were like before? I'm starting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, how long have you had your Tesla for, Scott?
Oh, well, I've had the Tesla since March the 1st. I got it, and it's unbelievable compared to the car that I had before. The car I had before was the BMW 5 Series 530e.
Yeah.
So that was the hybrid sort of variation, and that was that was a nice car. The only thing is the range back then on that particular car, I think it only did 18 miles on the electric. Which compared to the Tesla of what I've got now does 310 miles to the charge. So it's absolute chalk and cheese. And one of the main reasons I've got it is just because of work. Yeah. Because it is a company car. I save a lot of money personally on it. And running it through the business, it's just, for me, it's the best way forward, and it's the greener way forward as well, because we haven't at the moment. We are going to get a charging point at work.
Yeah.
But, I can't remember the last time well, I can remember the last time I went to the petrol station. It was the time I had the 5 Series. But it is a...
Have you you've not been to a petrol station with the have you not used the public charge network at all on the Tesla?
I've only used it once. I used it once because I collected it from Birmingham, because with the Teslas, you have to go and collect them. I know they're doing deliveries now, I believe, but I had to go and collect it from the dealership. And it was from Birmingham. I'm from Northampton. So it was, I think it was about 60 miles or 70 miles. When I got into the Tesla, there was only 50-mile range.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit daunting. So I had to sort of go to one of the fast charging points. And the Tesla fast charge, and that was just phenomenal because I didn't know how to. Well, first things I didn't know actually how to do it.
Yeah.
But then clearly, it was very straightforward. I just literally just plugged it in, and off it went. And it only took 25 to 30 minutes to charge, full charge.
Yeah, that's not too bad. But the thing is, you wouldn't want to be doing that every week all the time, would you? Because it could be a little bit laborious, and you could end up spending 2 hours a week or a fortnight or whatever, charging the car. So I think the key is to charge it at home, charge it at work. There's the grants that are available to make that more affordable. And one of the referrals I passed into the Carbon guys has been for a local hotel, and they're actually viewing that as something that's attractive to get people to come to the hotel and stay. Because if you had an electric vehicle, you would specifically look for a hotel that had charging facilities. And I think being in the business of providing charge points at the minute is certainly going to be a flourishing industry. And I've heard talk of people predicting that almost every parking space in the UK at some point will have some kind of charging. So it's going to be interesting watching things unfold, and not only in the automotive industry. How are these technologies going to be adopted in our everyday working lives, in the way that we cook, the way that we heat our houses. So it's an interesting time, really, and it's a good time to be in the motor trade as well. We're really enjoying talking to our clients about this particular topic because it isn't straightforward, and there are a few things that they need to consider, and that suits us just fine.
We do have a couple of other questions. We've got an anonymous one, so I'll ask the question. Where can you test drive a Tesla?
We could probably arrange that, for one. So you could talk to us about it. There are some Tesla garages. I think the closest Tesla garage is in South Manchester. I think it's in Stockport or Wilmslow, somewhere like that. So that's the closest one to us. It is a little bit of a trek. We are actually looking to get Tesla to come up to East Lancashire, maybe in conjunction with the Chamber, and put a bit of a ride and drive day on. So if anybody was interested in doing that, let me know, and that'll help me arrange it. But actually going to one of the garages, which actually interestingly is a bit like going to an Apple store, to be honest. It's quite a unique experience. So if you're interested in those vehicles, certainly go and have a look.
Okay. One of my team, Lizzie, has a question for you. So Lizzie, if you just want to unmute your microphone.
Hiya. Hiya. So I just wondered how reliable second-hand electric cars are. I heard something vaguely mentioned about the fact that their ranges were considerably reduced. So is this an issue with second-hand cars?
The answer is we don't exactly know yet, because we're not old enough particularly to know how these vehicles behave when they get a few kind of years on the clock. I mean, the leasing companies who set the residual values, which is essentially a predicted value of the vehicle in 2, 3, 4 years' time, they're quite bullish about how they will hold their value, and therefore that's an indicator of what they perceive the second-hand market will be for those vehicles. There are some people that are concerned that the batteries will deteriorate. There are some people concerned that how much will that cost to actually put replacement batteries into the cars and the vans. So there's a little bit of concern there. Personally, I'm not too concerned about it. I mean, the leasing companies who underwrite the future value of these vehicles are very confident about it, and they're the ones ultimately that are taking the risk on the value of these vehicles. So I'll kind of take their lead on that a little bit. But there are some unknowns, Lizzie, that's for sure, and it'll be interesting to see what the used market is for these vehicles. I mean, because they haven't got anything like as many moving parts in terms of being a piece of machinery like a diesel or a petrol vehicle, they should have lots of longevity, but remains to be seen.
Thank you. That's reassuring to hear.
Okay, we have a number of anonymous questions. One is, it'll be interesting to see what else the charging station could do. Is it just for cars, or because there's now a whole set of construction equipment that's come out. You've now got forklift trucks. You've now got little diggers that are all they're changing their battery technologies from the banks of 12-volt lead acid batteries, and are all moving. Is the charging point versatile, or is it purely electric vehicle?
I guess the delivery of the voltage will probably be quite consistent. It's probably just more to do with the ports and the actual plug. So I'm not my area as such charging, but I've not tried my shaver on a charger yet, but we can try. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, on that.
You've preempted the next question, so I'll skip over that. And then I must admit, I've been doing some carbon footprints and the things, and it is for comparisons between electric vehicles. Currently, what's the amount of kilowatt hours that a charger will pull? You know, between you've got the rapid chargers at 20, that take 20 minutes. What type of kilowatt hour are they pulling down for that 20 minutes or so?
Above my pay grade a little bit, that, Stephen. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest.
Ah, right, okay.
It's a bit of a specialised area. I mean, we refer to some businesses that provide these charge points, and that's probably something I'd lay at their door a little bit.
And the other question that's there is, what's the current cost per kilowatt hour? But that is purely down to whatever contract you've negotiated, or for the public infrastructure, as in, you know what you're paying for your electricity at home, you know what you're paying for your electricity at work. But if you were out on the motorway network, for example, what type of
cost?
What type of costs are we looking at there?
Well, I couldn't tell you exactly, but like anything, where more convenience is offered, you kind of pay more for that. So that we expect that kind of charging to be more expensive. There's some concerns about the ability of the grid to be able to deliver the additional electricity that we're going to be using for vehicles and other technologies and equipment within the home. Some of the charge points are sophisticated enough and intelligent enough, smart, I guess is what you'd refer to them as, to know when the best time of day or night might be to acquire the cheapest electricity to give you the charge that you've told the unit that you require for the following day. So there's some quite sophisticated technology they use for that. But and actually, I saw one of the charge point companies, one of the market leaders, actually offers a service where they will not just fit the charge point, but they'll help you with the tariff as well. And there are some tariffs that are specific to help you acquire electricity at the best rate, at the best time, as well as the technology. So it's interesting. There's lots of facets to it, and then there's lots of opportunities for companies to provide services.
I've just been given the answer. It's approximately 35 pence per kilowatt hour on a public charger. So, like I say, it is as you say, it's quite interesting. And the Chamber Low Carbon team, myself and Chris, we sit on Electricity Northwest's sustainability and chief executives panel, and developing the infrastructure because they're having to change from being a distribution network operator, whereby they take electricity from a power station, and then through the distribution networks, it arrives at your business, it arrives at your home. They're now having to develop their network and the infrastructure to allow electricity to actually, because you might become a prosumer. So you could be generating electricity on your roof. You could be selling it to your next door neighbor, charging your car, so that the whole infrastructure debate, as in do we spend now, or do we wait for things to fall over before we start spending money? Because is hydrogen going to take over? So there's
Yeah.
quite a lot of debate.
There's still some people, isn't there, backing hydrogen to make a serious play specifically in this market. But at the moment, we've kind of got electric vehicles to kind of focus on, really. But I think the way that energy is going to be provisioned is going to, I think it's almost going to be another evolution in our society right across the board.
Well, I think at the moment hydrogen is more focused on the HGVs, the trains, the buses, the more the bigger, and like I say, I know that hydrogen's currently being used in generators for a lot of construction projects in the centre of London to avoid paying the congestion charge and various things.
Interesting. I did hear there's actually you can get certainly commercial tariffs where you can, like you said, make your surplus electricity available to the public charging network. And it's one of the things that the hotel that I've referred to you guys is looking at, whether or not they can actually make that a chargeable service that's available to the public. So yeah, lots going on. Very interesting stuff.
Well, I was going to say just there's no more questions, but my colleague who did set up charging around Britain has also charged around Iceland just to prove that was also possible. His next adventure is actually going to be to drive across the desert in Australia, and he's talking to a professor at Newcastle University, as in Newcastle, Australia, not in the northeast, and he's looking at printed photovoltaics to actually line the car with the photovoltaics to actually recharge the car from the sun as you're driving through the desert during the day.
Makes sense.
All I'm saying is that electric vehicles are evolving all the time.
Absolutely. It's an interesting time for the motor industry, and we're trying our best to be at the forefront of that and help people guide the way through it.
Right. I'm not seeing any more questions either on the Q&A or on the in the chat. So if there are no further questions, I'd like to thank Marc for his time, expertise and insights today, and also to thank you for your attendance. We hope you found it interesting. And our next Lunch and Learn Live is in 2 weeks' time on Friday the 31st and is focused on net zero, what it means and why is it important to SMEs as well as to larger companies. This will be brought to you by James Napier of CBN Expert. To find out more about this event and to register for future events, or indeed to find out about previous Lunch and Learn Live events, please go to the Chamber Low Carbon website for more details and to register. Please keep in touch with us via the media channels on your screen now. And until we see you again, on behalf of Marc, the Chamber Low Carbon team and myself, be alert and stay safe.